it's open.
I have Farhan who's telling me what to say, what to do at all times.
You didn't send us that link to the.
No,
I
I
want
need
to ask
to do that.
questions, but
No, I will.
I'm going to ask about it today. But
Okay.
you want to keep Farhan in all the time.
His lucky devil is on vacation.
All right, what is today?
Today is Thursday.
No, well, yes, but today, most importantly, today is the opening day of the 2023 Major League Baseball season. Come on.
Did you listen to the Daily?
Not yet.
The baseball got so boring that they redid the rules.
Yes, that's an old story. I mean, it's not today's story. The New York Times is one of the many issues I refuse to comment on in this room. All right, we're going to have a good year with the Mets this year. So tomorrow our guest will be Antonio Vittorino, the head of the International Organization for Migration. He will brief you here, head of the International Dialogue on Migration, which is taking place in the Trusteeship Council today and tomorrow. Today is, in addition to being the opening day of the baseball season, as Emily said, it is the first ever International Day of Zero Waste. The Secretary General said at a high-level meeting of the General Assembly this morning, as part of the events to mark the day, that humanity is treating our planet like a garbage dump. He warned that by 2050, municipal solid waste will double to 4 billion tons each year. He called on everyone to work as one to build a circular zero-waste future. Mr. Guterres underscored that Sustainable Development Goal 12 reminds us of the imperative to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns by 2030, and that the General Assembly resolution on Zero Waste Initiative demonstrates the political will is there. He called on countries to take inspiration from the examples like Türkiye's Zero Waste project spearheaded by the First Lady of Turkey, Emin Erdogan. The Secretary General also announced that he's establishing an advisory board on imminent persons on zero waste. The board will share success stories on national and local zero waste initiatives. A number of you had asked me for a readout of the meeting between the Secretary General and the First Lady of Türkiye, Emin Erdogan. As you can imagine, they discussed the Zero Waste Project. Mr. Guterres thanked the First Lady for agreeing to chair the Advisory Board of Eminent Persons on Zero Waste, and that will be along with Jose Manuel Moller, CEO and founder of Algramo, as vice chair. Algramo, for those of you who don't know, is a Chilean-based startup that aims to reduce plastic waste by enabling people to refill household product containers. And in a statement we released a bit earlier today, the Secretary General noted his deep concern by reports that the Union Election Commission appointed by the military in Myanmar has dissolved 40 opposition parties, including the National League for Democracy, led by State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi. Any attempts to undermine democratic institutions and processes will only deepen the crisis and delay the return to fully democratic and inclusive Myanmar. The Secretary General renews his call on neighboring countries and other member states to urge the military leadership to adhere to inclusive political processes. He reiterates his call for the immediate release of all arbitrary detained prisoners, including President Win Myint and Aung San Suu Kyi. This morning, the Security Council held an open debate on peace and security in Africa, focusing on the impact of development policies and the implementation of Silencing the Guns initiative. Briefing the council members was Cristina Duarte, the Undersecretary General's Special Advisor on Africa. She renewed the Secretary General's own call that the flames of conflict are fueled by inequality, deprivation, and underfunded systems. She outlined that the only effective solution to conflicts in Africa is sustainable development to boost the capacity of African countries to tackle both the internal and external causes of conflict. Also briefing the Council was Mirko Manzoni, the personal envoy of the Secretary General for Mozambique. He spoke about the signing and implementation of the Maputo Accord for Peace and National Reconciliation between the government of Mozambique and the Renamo Group. He pointed out four fundamental reasons for its success: establishing national ownership from the outset, building trust, remaining flexible, and ensuring a human-centered process throughout. Mr. Manzoni stressed the success of a peace process should not be measured by the difficulties it encounters. Rather, it should be judged on the basis of how those involved choose to overcome such difficulties. Full remarks were shared with you. We're also sharing Ms. Duarte's remarks. And for those of you who are interested in the situation in Mozambique, Mr. Manzoni will be at the stakeout after the council meeting. Also on Mozambique, our humanitarian colleagues are appealing for an additional funding to help some 815,000 men, women, and children impacted by a triple crisis: floods, cholera, and tropical cyclone Freddy. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that an extra $138 million is urgently needed to complement the government's response in southern and central areas of the country. This is in addition to the existing 2023 humanitarian response plan for Mozambique, which calls for $513 million and is just 12% funded. Humanitarian teams in Mozambique urge donors to step up their funding to provide food, shelter, health, hygiene, water, and sanitation services, and other life-saving assistance. The money, if received, will also help fight cholera, which has spread to 8 of Mozambique's 11 provinces. Nearly 20,000 cases have now been reported. Quick update from our peacekeeping mission in South Sudan. Speaking to the reconstituted Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission today, the deputy head of the mission, Guang Kong, commended the resumption of the talks between the transitional government and non-signatory South Sudanese opposition group under the auspices of the Sant'Egidio community, as well as some security and legislative advances, noting with concern, however, delays in the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement and called to expedite, without further delay, the adoption of National Election Act to allow the reconstitution of National Election Commission and, in turn, commencement of the electoral preparation. Quick update from our earthquake response in Syria and Türkiye. Since last month, we and our partners have provided shelter support, including tents, to nearly 100,000 people in Syria. Partners have also distributed more than 850,000 ready-to-eat rations and over 1 million hot meals to people across the impacted areas. In the northwest, more than 1,177 UN relief trucks entered from Türkiye since the earthquake, and UN agencies have completed about 45 cross-border missions to meet affected people, assess their needs, and coordinate the response. Still, in the northwest, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that yesterday 2 people lost their lives because of a windstorm. Among them was a child. At least 500 tents were damaged. In the same areas had already been affected by flooding earlier this month. The $4.8 billion appeal for Syria is currently 5.6% funded. We urgently need more resources to support over 15 million people across the country who were already in dire need before the earthquake. And in Türkiye, we and our partners have provided shelter to support over 700,000 people, with over 4 million people have received basic household items such as clothing, cooking, and sleeping. Some 3 million people have also registered for emergency assistance. Quick update from the South Pacific and from Vanuatu, where over 250,000 people, and that's about 80% of the country's population, have been impacted by 2 Category 4 cyclones and earthquakes that hit the country earlier this month. Today, the World Food Programme, through its Pacific Humanitarian Air Service, transported 15 metric tons of critical relief assistance to the country. The humanitarian cargo includes medical supplies, food rations, and WFP continues to support Vanuatu's own the government of Vanuatu's own efforts in the areas of logistics, emergency telecommunications, and food security. More information online. Today, the Major General Haroldo Lazzaro, the head of the UN mission in Lebanon, UNIFIL, peacekeeping mission, chaired the regular tripartite meeting at a UN position in Ras al-Nakora in southern Lebanon. He urged the parties to continue to coordinate in advance activities near the line with UNIFIL and avoid actions that could escalate the situation, increase tensions. He underscored that both parties have the responsibility to take preventive action to avoid a breach in the cessation of hostilities. And I had been asked by a number of you for questions related to the work of our mission in Western Sahara, MINURSO. our colleagues there recall that resupply to team sites east of the berm have been an issue on which we've been in discussions with the parties. Agreements have now been reached for a new convoy to proceed at the earliest opportunity. This is a welcome development. To recall, because of the lack of ground convoy movement since the resumption of hostilities in 2020, MINURSO team sites east of the berm have been running out of critical supplies, especially fuel. We look forward to having this convoy move very soon. A quick note on a campaign launched by the Regional Education Group for Latin America and the Caribbean, which includes UNICEF, UNESCO, Save the Children, and others, which aims to highlight the education crisis experienced by children and adolescents on the move. In the region, around 3.7 million children and adolescents are displaced or on the move in search of a better opportunity and access to basic services. They are forced to interrupt their studies and face multiple barriers to continue their learning, whether in transit or in host countries. The campaign, called Education Without Limits, I Learn Here or There, will provide resources for these children. And lastly, our almost daily geography quiz. 2 more countries have paid up in full, 2 island nations. The first one, in the 17th century, the main island of Mascarenes was named in honor of Prince Moritz van Nassau. Any idea what that could be? The other island is formerly known as Ellis Island, CE, not Ellis Island here. And it's situated about midway between Hawaii and Australia. The first is about 2,000 square kilometers, while the second island is only 26 square kilometers. Suriname is not an island nation, James.
I read the website. I googled Mauritius.
What? Vanuatu? It is Tuvalu and Mauritius. Okay. If you look at the website before the quiz, it's a breach of the honor code. But despite the disparity in size, our gratitude is shared equally, and we thank our good friends in Port Louis. And what is the capital of Tuvalu, Mr. I look at the website before I answer the quiz. Funafuti. Okay. James, go ahead.
Okay. Russia has arrested the Wall Street Journal journalist Ivan Gershkovich, a U.S. national. What is the Secretary General's reaction to the fact that a journalist doing his job has been arrested and accused of espionage?
We have, Secretary General has expressed his concern over and over again at the growing trend where we're seeing journalists being harassed or detained or worse just for doing their job. And I will leave it at that.
Can I two different subjects? South Sudan, the President Salva Kiir has now appointed a new defense minister. This minister is a member of his own party. He sacked the minister who's a member of the opposition party of Riek Machar. This seems to be a breach of the deal the two leaders made. It's increasing tension. What's the UN's reaction?
I mean, we're very much aware of the situation, and I think, as I've just mentioned, I think kind of also spoken to on the ground by Guang Kong, it is very important that all of the parties in South Sudan live up to the agreements they've made. As you mentioned, we've seen throughout the country a rise in tensions. Some of it are political, some of it are have other reasons. But as always, it's the civilians who are paying the price.
And finally, this is an investigation, nothing to do with me, I hasten to add. The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ProPublica, and 59 media partners have done an investigation called Shadow Diplomats. And it's about the role of honorary consul that many countries have. And it reveals that honorary consuls, which are an important part of the diplomatic system, they are sometimes using their position for serious crimes, including drugs and weapons trafficking. There have been links to terrorist groups, and also there is apparently a growing business in people actually selling these jobs for vast money, saying, well, you can have a diplomatic passport and whatever as an honorary consul. This has been a very old position that's been established for a long time in diplomacy. Does the Secretary-General share concerns about the way it's being abused?
Look, these are issues related to bilateral relations between states. It's not a practice that involves the UN. We have no special insight besides what we've read in the media. It is obviously incumbent on all member states to respect diplomatic practice and ensure its integrity. Benno and then Yvonne.
Do you have a message for the Pope, who is in the hospital right now?
Yes, we wish him well. We hope to see the Holy Father back out and on his feet as quickly as possible, especially with the Holy Easter week coming up. Yvonne.
Thanks, Stéphane. There's the emergency Syria appeal. It's only 5.6% funded so far.
If that's what I said,
Is that
that's what
you
it
said?
is.
And would that be considered low at this point in the appeal?
Yes, it is. It is low. I think. Listen. Yes, by all measure, 5.6% is low. There is also a annual. Let's be clear. The $4.8 billion appeal for Syria, which is the humanitarian appeal, which is 5.6% funded, was the appeal we put out prior to the earthquake, right? For the humanitarian situation. There is also another appeal specific to the earthquake, but 5.6% is low, and I would say that, except for a few exceptions, most of our humanitarian appeals are low in the funding target.
Okay, so just to clarify, the Syria appeal is not exceptionally low if you compare it to the other.
I mean, it's a strange comparison. Low is low, right? I mean, we ask for an amount of money, which is the money we need. Whether it's 5.6% funded, 3% funded, or 10% funded, that is low, and that hampers our ability to deliver much needed humanitarian food. Our colleagues at OCHA have a very good website with all the appeals, and you can do the mathematics and the comparison as well.
Okay, and then I have a question about zero waste. The new advisory board of eminent persons on zero waste. The advisory board will share success stories of national and local zero waste initiatives. Anything else, or will that just be its job?
Well, I think there'll be other activities, but it is also a way to share best practices and examples. Hold on, we'll go online. I think I have a few questions. Okay, Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stéphane. Today, Francesca Albanese, the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territories, issued a very strong statement calling on the international community to do more to the Palestinians and do some protection. Indirectly, she criticized the United Nations and called on the UN to not just count the victims and call for restraint. These are not two equal partners. UN must do more, especially in the field of accountability. Do you subscribe to her statement?
Listen, it depends what UN she's talking about. Ms. Albanese is part of the UN system. The special rapporteurs are independent of the Secretary General. They have an important voice. In terms of the Secretary General's own viewpoint, it has been made over and over again. And has been very clear, and as well as our humanitarian and development work in the region. So it's not for me to comment, analyze, or otherwise speak to what she said. 1 second, Deji, let me stay online, and then I'll come back to to you. Mushfiqul, please.
Thank you, Stéphane. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Crackdown on freedom of expression and journalists going on in Bangladesh. Yesterday, Shamsuzzaman Shams, Pratham Alo staff reporter of the Bengali Daily, picked up from his home. Later, regime filed cases against him under the Digital Security Act. And the largest Bengali Daily, Pratham Alo editor, also been sued under the same draconian law. Earlier in March, the brother of journalist Zulkarnain, who used to work for the Al Jazeera investigative unit, his brother attacked and beaten very badly. So what is your comment? A member state is going down.
I think
for the freedom of expression.
as I said at the beginning of this briefing, when James asked me a question, the Secretary General has repeatedly and continues to express his concern and very deep concern at the continued harassments we are seeing of journalists the world over, being harassed, detained, or otherwise making it very difficult for them to do their jobs. A free press is a backbone of the world we would like to aspire to all live in. Deji.
Yeah, I have an interesting question here.
For once, yes.
Last week, the AI generated a photo of Pope Francis wearing a white puffy jacket went viral, and also we saw the generated pictures of Mr. Trump being arrested last week. I remember I also asked you about the ChatGPT.
Yes,
and
exactly.
it seems
And then ChatGPT
ChatGPT
came up
is
with a better
replacing
answer than me.
everybody's
Yeah,
work,
yeah,
and
yeah.
now we have generated photos that might be, disinformation. How much does the Secretary General worry about this technology, which might help people, but also to do bad to those things?
It is very worrying, and you're right. This technology can have, the artificial intelligence technology can have huge amount of benefits, in education, in science. But companies need to be responsible on how that information is released, because it can be misused, and we've already seen it very quickly, whether it's altered images, altered voice, altered text, in ways that can only increase dissent, violence, and misinformation. Yes, James.
Well, just to follow up, the Secretary General is one of the first people who, for a long, long time, has been talking about AI and the problems in AI. Is he considering, how the UN should respond? Is he considering any new positions, any new structures? Is he considering having a special representative to deal with AI? Is he considering, some body here? Is he going to recommend to the Human Rights Council there should be a special rapporteur on the issues of AI?
I mean, we have a tech envoy who we should, in fact, bring down to you here. I think one of the challenges that we're seeing with AI, the tech sector in general, it operates mostly outside of full government control. We have been, which I'm not saying is neither good nor bad. It's just a fact. What we have been seeing are efforts by the UN through multi-stakeholder meetings, bringing together governments, private sector, civil society, and we will continue in that effort to try to get accepted guidelines to ensure that the technology is not abused, to ensure that it doesn't lead us on a path that we can't come back from, while at the same time harvesting all the immense positive potential all this technology can bring us. Speaking of amazing potential.
It's just a friendly reminder that I'm still after that public document.
Yes,
you
exactly. And I
referenced
told James
yesterday about Taiwanese passport holders.
I try to wipe my brain after each briefing, but I will try not to do that today. On that note, thank you, and we'll let you know when the personal envelope from Mozambique goes to the stakeout.